I am super excited sitting here right now and introducing to you today's podcast guest. A guest I was a long time wishing to have, and I'm super happy she said yes to this conversation. She's very inspiring to me for many reasons. A heartwarming human, a beautiful soul. Her name is Rachel Brathen, and most of you probably know her as Yoga Girl. For the ones who don't know her yet, here comes the official introduction. Rachel Brathen is an international recognized yoga teacher from Sweden. New York bestselling author, founder, and CEO of Yoga Girl, as well as 2 nonprofit organizations and host of 2 #1 podcast shows. She started incorporating yoga into her everyday life in Costa Rica after graduating school and began teaching yoga full-time when she settled into Aruba in early 2010. 7 years later, she opened, together with her husband Dennis, Island Yoga, the largest yoga studio in the Caribbean. And within these years, she developed a social media presence with more than 2 million followers. In her teaching, the main lesson is that asana is only a small piece of the work done in a yoga shala. She incorporates holistic therapeutic tools like sharing, active listening, journaling, and there is a deep level of heart healing at the center of every class she's giving. Now, Rachel's back living in her home country, Sweden, seeking contentment and spending her days with her husband and their daughter, Lea Luna, and their 3 dogs. In this episode, Rachel and me will be speaking about her big life transition moving from Aruba to Sweden, her definition of Yoga Girl today, and how yoga has changed for her over the years. We speak about Rachel's routine, how she actually records her own podcast, and how we can all learn to speak more from the heart. And we speak about the definition of success and why resting is so important for all of us. Enjoy this very inspiring episode. Welcome to Yoga Beyond the Asana, the wonderful podcast. I am Wanda Badwal. Together, we will explore the fascinating world of yoga, spirituality, and personal development. We hear and we learn how we can integrate more love, balance, and fulfillment into our daily lives. Thank you for listening. So welcome to the podcast, Rachel. I'm so happy that you're here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Rachel, I would love to start the podcast with a little 3 to 5 minute mindfulness meditation. I know you also often do it in your podcast. So would you be up for leading us into a little arriving together?
Little arriving. I love that word, arriving. Yes. Let's do that. Okay. So however we are sitting now, I think we should take a moment just to uncross our legs and steady ourselves into the earth a little bit. For me, I find it's helpful to just pick up my feet and then ground them back and do that a few times to remind ourselves of that sense of connection that we have to the earth, that she's always here to hold us, always here to steady us and help us ground if we need some grounding. And then just allowing the breath to continue the way the natural breath wants to flow. So keeping the inhales and exhales flowing through the nose without having to manipulate the breath, without having to create something new out of the breath. And simply beginning to pay attention to your breath. So that practice of mindfulness, of allowing ourselves to dwell where we already are. That we don't have to become anything better. We don't have to improve upon ourselves right now. We don't have to get to a new place, but just allowing ourselves to be as we are in this moment. And bringing more awareness to how the breath is already flowing through the nose. And the beautiful thing about that is that as soon as we start paying more attention to where we are, to how we are feeling, how we are breathing, immediately everything starts to slow down. The body wants to take deep, full breaths all the time. All it needs is just that little bit of presence. So sensing how the breath is moving in through the nose and just noticing where it's moving inside of the body. And as the breath turns and becomes an exhale, noticing how that exhale is moving through the body and back out through the nose. And we take just a few moments in this very, very grounded place. Feet connected to the earth. Presence anchored in the breath. And letting ourselves be just the way we already are. Maybe allowing that next full cycle of breath to grow even just a little bit deeper, making space inside of ourselves. And letting the next exhale become deeper as well, just letting something go. And when we feel ready, we can gently blink our eyes open, return to the space we were already in, just a little bit more grounded.
Thank you so much for slowing us all down, especially me. I'm a bit nervous, I have to say. So, first question I love to ask, what moves you right now, Rachel?
My daughter. She moves me physically. I mean, all through the day, we're kind of in that 5-year-old energy of everything is play all the time. Everything is joy. Everything is excitement. So she moves me physically, and she also moves me emotionally, spiritually, energetically. She's the light of my life. Absolutely.
So beautiful. I can very much relate. I also have a big light over here. Yeah, so let's dive into our conversation. So many topics, so many questions. I also ask my community up front what they're keen about. And so first, let's speak a little bit about, the big major life shift you've made just recently, moving from Aruba to Sweden. And many people know you as Yoga Girl, as a woman, a girl then that lived on a Caribbean island doing handstand on the beach. And I guess, and I know that your definition of Yoga Girl has changed. And what does Yoga Girl mean to you today? How do you define that?
I mean, I never really defined myself as Yoga Girl. This was always something I struggled a little bit with. Yoga Girl was a really great name that I chose for my first social media platform that I ever had. And I was just a girl teaching yoga and practicing yoga every day and living yoga in every way I could. And that quickly grew, but I never felt like it became like a persona or, an identity, or it's someone that I was, like I was wearing a hat of being Yoga Girl. It's always, I was just sharing myself and my life. And whenever people would stop me in the street and they would say, "Oh, hey, Yoga Girl, it's so nice to meet you." And I would always say like, "Hey, my name is Rachel," just because I never really identified with I was just the girl practicing yoga. And then since then, Yoga Girl has evolved and become a brand name, an online platform. I mean, it's much bigger than just me. It's a community. It's millions of people across the world who align with just what I share in the day to day. So it just feels bigger than one person at this point.
Mm-hmm. There are quotes on the internet like, you're called the teacher of yoga as an exercise, a pioneer of sub yoga. And now you're focusing more on healing and therapeutic practices like mindfulness, grounding, awareness practices. And how has, for you personally, your yoga and your perspective on yoga changed, and also your teaching over the years?
I mean, it's changed a lot, but I don't know any yoga teacher that teaches the same way today that they did, 12 years ago. I think it's important that we evolve and we change and we grow. For me, I mean, it was a very brief moment of time, actually, where I really aligned purely or mainly with the asana portion of the practice. And that was, I think, what was very noisy and loud and on social media and pictures and, inversions and all of that stuff. But it was a really short period of time, actually, where that was my practice. I quickly, I think like most people, if you practice long enough, you're going to get to a place where you realize the heart of the practice is not in the pose. And I found myself getting a little bit deterred, actually, that I find that the obsession with the pose for me of getting to the next place or advancing this or doing something that looked cool, it was very empowering in the beginning, but after a while, it led me further astray. I felt less connected to myself. I felt less present. I felt my ego had a bigger place on the mat. And so I fairly early on shifted both my practice and my teaching away from the pose of it, I guess. But that's hard to align with social media, of course, because in social media, especially back then, what you saw was the post. That's what social media is. It's very, very hard to convey a whole philosophy and practice in an image on social media.
Yeah.
But now, when I teach a very nature-based practice. It's more of a mix of, of course, yoga is always there, but I love to incorporate ritual and ceremony. And if I'm in person, which I'm very rarely now, but I really miss, there's always a component of sharing and connecting with the people in the room, journaling. I'm more about the heart of what gets us closer to healing than anything else.
I love that. You recently made a major life change and moved back to your home country, Sweden. After, I think, 10 years living in Aruba. 10 years? 12.
Long time.
So what have been the main reasons for you and your family to leave Aruba, if you would sum it up?
It was like the perfect storm of a lot of different things that aligned at the same time. I think mainly I was longing to return to my roots in a major way. Like I didn't know, it wasn't a conscious idea that I had, but I was missing Sweden. I was missing the forest. I was missing family, cold water. Like there was a lot of things I was missing. But what happened in the logistics of it was that we found out that we had toxic mold in our house, and we had to really quickly kind of evacuate our home. And then that aligned with a time in our lives where we were ready for a transition and a change. And it became this kind of, a moment when life pushes you to do the thing that you're meant to do. And we never got the chance to go, oh, it would be lovely to calmly move. Eventually, it was like a catapult, of changing our lives.
Mm-hmm. And did you also ever consider any other places to move to? Or was it then clear, okay, it's back to my roots? Or were there also other options, also involving in this decision? Maybe, I don't know, interest in sports. I know Dennis is very passionate about biking and surfing. And I think surfing, I don't know how good it is in Sweden, but like, did you also consider other places, or was it always, okay, then it's Sweden?
We have over the years just kind of thought of different options of where to live. If we're not going to live in the Caribbean, where would we go? And then I don't think we considered Sweden wasn't at the top of the list at all. We thought about Portugal, for example, which is, I know where you are now. For a little while before things got really wild, we thought about the States, maybe Oregon or Colorado being an option. And then that kind of went away. We thought about Australia for a while. Like, we had a lot of just conversations around where would we find home if that would happen. But then when this happened, it was just became so evident that Sweden was the place. And I don't know if we're here I don't think there's such a thing as a forever, so, but for now and for here, it feels really good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm also personally very curious about, because we had a lot of conversations, where to live and where to integrate all the different interests. Like, my interest is to live in the warmth because I get very cold in Germany, and to live, where's most of the year sun, and where's the ocean, close by the ocean. I really want to live by the ocean, and, not too far away from home, and all of that. So, yeah, it's always interesting to hear, what places other people also to consider to live. But it's obvious, of course, you're from Sweden. So, and yeah, it looks like you're really happy there.
People get confused, especially Swedish people. They're like, "Oh, you just moved here from where?" We say from the Caribbean, and they go, "Why?" Like, what's wrong with you? Well, people usually do the other way around.
Yeah,
but
it's true.
When you've lived in a place where the sun shines every day, 365 days a year, we have no seasons there. It never rains. It's really the same, the forest and the lake, and the winter time, it becomes very exotic. So for us, and for Dennis also, and my daughter, who'd never seen snow before we moved here, a little while ago, it's been as exciting to move here as I think it would be for someone from Sweden or Germany to move to the Caribbean. It's been an exciting time.
Yeah. Yeah, I can totally relate. I mean, I've just been, I lived for 3 years in Bali. So also a very tropical island, by myself. And I made the experience that I just then realized how German I am when I lived in Bali. And before, I'd never considered myself quite like German, the values and everything that's related to that culture. What would you say, like, what's Swedish about you, or what did you realize when you lived in the Caribbean? Wow, like I'm different from that lifestyle, or I feel more drawn to that part of you.
I mean, I think there's a lot of the typical things. I could get very frustrated of things taking a long time. I think living in a country like Germany or Sweden, we are very used to they happen right away. They happen as people say they're supposed to happen. There's a system. If someone has someone's coming to your house to fix something that's broken, it's like, I'll be there at this time, and then they come at that time. Where in Aruba, that's more of a benchmark for maybe the week, kind of ish. And then they might show up, and they will not tell you if they don't show up, and then you have to call them, and then maybe, it's like very just different mentality around things like that. For a reason, it's a different culture, and it's also more relaxed in 1,000 different ways. So you have to kind of, I think, whenever you are a guest in another culture and you're visiting, really embrace it for what it is. And for me, I relaxed a lot just living in Aruba, learning that there's other ways. There's other ways to go about your day, to appreciate your life. It's not about maximizing your output in every single thing you do. There's something about that calm ability to focus on enjoyment, versus work is everything, and that's the only thing you're supposed to do. And I think we can learn a lot from that.
Yeah, so much. I'm, just so smiling over here because we just doing our fences in the land we live in, and the fence guys, they're just saying, they just call you and say like, "Are you home? We're here now." And you're like,
Yeah.
"What? You wanted to come 2 weeks ago?"
Yeah. That's also very Aruba. Like we could be doing anything, and then it's just like, I got to go to the house because someone's there. It's like, okay, so you do that, It's like
so funny.
Like,
mm-hmm. You were just talking about output and maximizing output. I mean, since Yoga Girl is a super successful brand which incorporates your online yoga studio, you offer self-help courses, yoga teacher trainings, retreats. You have a studio in Aruba still, 2 podcasts, an Instagram channel, countless editorial output on your website, a foundation. So what really interests me, also being a mom, where do you get the energy from to strive while having all this output?
That would have been a really perfect question for me like 3 years ago, I think, maybe 2 years ago, because I don't align with that anymore. I mean, I still have all of those things in play and active, and of course we have employees and we have big things moving and happening all the time every day, but I no longer have that need to keep everything in play at a maximum place at all time. And it really was the pandemic that brought me that realization. I always thought that, because I'm in this field, I practice a lot. I have a really steady meditation practice. I take care of myself. I can manage all of these things, no problem. And I can just keep growing them and keep inventing things and starting companies and keep creating forever, And that actually was a lie. It wasn't true. I was functioning. I was a very high functioning, burned out person, I think, for a very long time. Like I never hit a wall where all of a sudden I couldn't get out of bed. Nothing horrible happened to me, but I definitely compromised my rest and my well-being for the sake of juggling 500 different things. And I really thought that was, I would wake up in the morning and then I would run through my whole entire day until I went to sleep. And then I would do the same thing the next day and never take vacations, work all weekends, never had any boundaries really between work and home because home was work. Even my practice became part of work. Everything became a doing, versus a being. And the thing I realized really in the pandemic is I didn't really know where I was heading. I just knew I should maximize everything and do everything as well as I could and as fast as I could. And then the pandemic came and I was like, but for what? Like, what is my inner biggest motivation? We had 50 employees at that time and I think 8 or 7 entities in 4 countries and tours. And I mean, it was really crazy. And I realized I had completely lost my why. Like, what is it that I'm doing and why? I started this machine and then the machine just kept going and I had to keep up, but I completely lost the reason of why I was doing it all. And it took a complete pause, a complete stop, for me to get back to my real priorities. Mm-hmm. So whenever someone asks me that now, like, how do you do it all? It's so inspiring. It's like, I did it all, but it came at a super high cost and I don't recommend it. And I think the idea that we should have it all and be it all as women, it's harmful. Like you can't be a mom and CEO and chair of the board and run 1 million companies and be successful and do this and be a great friend and be a great boss and be a great daughter and be a great, something has to fall. And the thing that falls is us. Because as women, I think we deprioritize ourselves before anybody else. So instead of how can we have it all and do it all, I am now more focused on how can I focus on the very few single things that bring me joy and allow me space to rest and make me feel purposeful in my day. And then that's what.
Thank you so much for being so open about this process. I can very much relate. And I think 1,000 other people, women as well. And I was just called by a friend and he said, you have the superwoman syndrome, Wanda. I didn't know this term before, but it's that you can have it all and you can do it all at the same time. And as you say, it's a lie. And I think it's a lie told by society to us. And and all of that. But yeah, so it's very, very relaxing and healing to hear, that it's not possible. It comes with a cost. And I think it's important to talk about it, because I think we still think sometimes it's possible to do it all, to have it all, to be a great friend, to write a book, to, do everything at the same time. And that's actually not possible. It comes with a cost, as you say, of health or of rest.
Right, right. And I think it's also part of this, it came as part of feminism almost, when women started really growing and climbing in the workplace. It's like, you can do it all. You can be just like a man, But the men who got to where they are today, who are all at the 1% at the top, all the white men, they did that at a huge cost of family, of well-being, of things that really matter. And when women do it, we don't generally necessarily have often the partner there taking care of the home and the kids the way men did in the 50s, or, the people who took society to where we are today. The whole structure of it through the patriarchal system, and I think through capitalism, is just not a sustainable structure. And we try to attain that without really looking at where it's going to take us. So my idea now is like, I want to step out of the system entirely almost and stop putting myself against those, that measurement for what success is. Because when I really look inside of myself, that isn't how I value success. Being at the top of the ladder alone, it's not what success is for me. And I think it isn't for a lot of people, but we just don't have a lot to compare with. We don't have a lot of role models who really show us what that could look like.
And what would be success for you now? How would you describe it?
I mean, success for me is a feeling of contentment. And it's very different, the feeling of contentment versus the feeling of excitement or, big accomplishment, or the big highs that I would feel when something super big and really exciting happened. It would always kind of fizzle out and become, oh, well, now I have to do more. And now I have to maintain this thing. And I think contentment it's a much smaller word, but it's much more fulfilling. And I find contentment now, I can be home the whole entire day. I didn't do anything of value, in terms of success or growing a company or whatever, but I got to be at peace staying at home or work in the garden and pick up my daughter early from school because I have time to do that, and cook for my family. I mean, I have a different measurement just of what brings me contentment these days. So that's what I look for.
Thank you. But still, you have a company and you have,
of course,
a lot to do.
Yeah.
So what I would be super keen is like, how do you now prioritize or organize your day? As you just said, that you don't want to do it all anymore, and you want to focus more on the contentment and rest and incorporating that into your day, spending time with your daughter, with your family. So how do you do that practically? Do you sit down, okay, that's my priority list? Or like, do you have tools that help you to really know in yourself, or do you ask yourself specific questions? What's really important right now? Because I personally find it super hard with all the options. And I guess you have millions of options, what you could do, every day, what interviews you could say yes to, and, all of that. So how do you know inside of yourself what to say no to and what to say yes to?
Yeah, I think it changes for me a lot depending on my energy and my mood and whatever else is happening in my life. And I really struggle with that because I found myself in the past, I am in a really good place. I get lots of exciting opportunities. I say yes to everything. And then the time comes and I don't feel like it. I'm tired this week. I feel very introverted this week. I don't want to do anything, extroverted and out there. And once you've made the commitment, at least I'm the kind of person I would never, in the past especially, I would never back away from something just because I wasn't feeling good about it. We're all adults. We all have responsibilities and commitments that we have to really stick with. So I've just become much more cautious around what's in a week. And I know myself enough that if I have many of those kind of external appearances, I have to be on, I'm doing something, chances are by the last one that week, I'm going to be not super excited to sit there. So I'm just very, very careful of what I say yes to and what I plan, knowing that I want to try to match my current level of energy as much as I can and really make sure that the things that are on my plate are things I'm excited to do and that bring me joy. But then in a day, of course, we have to pay our bills. We have to do really boring stuff. We have to say yes to things we don't want to do. It's just part of being an adult. So what I try to do for those days is I do the biggest, hardest thing first.
Is it me today? Your hardest thing?
Oh, this is like, I am just hanging out here. No, this is not at all. Like something like where I have to put on makeup, for example, or I have to be, I don't know, a photo shoot. Like I really am not enjoying that anymore. I haven't for a very long time. Like I don't enjoy it's not about the beautification. It's something about, it takes me out of my authenticity to now we're going to make you a little better, put on these clothes, put on this face, smile and do this thing, which is very much what I think many just TV appearances and interviews and shoots and things like that. I don't enjoy them. And I never have really. So I say no to most, but I know if there's one that's really important or is really valuable, I try to schedule it early in the day so that it's like I do it first and then I can continue with the rest of my life and go home and take a bath if that's what I need after something hard. But it could also be I have a big thing in the day and it's a podcast or it's a meeting. I try to do it first. So it's not like my whole day builds up and then at the end of the day, I have the harder thing left, or the less joyful thing, whatever the thing is,
Yeah. Yeah. We call that swallowing the frog in the morning.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And then you can try to have less frogs, like you shouldn't have, if you feel like every day you wake up and your life is full of frogs, you have to swallow, then something's not right. It shouldn't be that way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I really appreciate that you said yes to this interview because I know a little bit how that feels, to have lots of options and that you said yes to this conversation. I'm really happy. So yeah, you were talking a little bit about what brings you joy and, I would love to, dive a little bit into a typical day of yours and into your self-care routines and how they look like. How does your personal practice look like now? How do you start your day? How do you end your day? What are your nourishing islands in your day?
It changes a lot. And now that I'm living in a seasonal place, I find it really changes with the seasons. I was talking about this a lot just this morning, just how I have a different need now that it's getting colder and we're getting closer to winter than what I do in the summertime. So summertime, I would wake up and walk barefoot into the garden and be in the garden, my first moments of the day. And that could really be a huge self-care practice for me to just be present there and to walk barefoot and to sit in the sun. And it didn't even have to be a formal meditation practice or anything like that. Just to wake up and be in my little corner of nature is super healing. And then now it's freezing cold. It's muddy. It's dark. Like when I wake up, the sun is not even up. Of course, the last thing I want to do is walk barefoot out into my garden, so that's not what I do in the mornings. Now, I start every day with tea. I have a tea practice where I sit in ceremony with tea at some point every day. Usually I do it when my daughter's off to school. My husband always drives her to school, and that's like my window to sit and be by myself. But the very first moments of the day, regardless, like she wakes me up in the morning. Like she's always the first person I see, and we always have moments together before I do anything else. And then the rest of my day, because I have the luxury of flexibility, which I know is very, very rare in your day to have open space where you can choose how and when to plan things. I can be really intuitive about that. So Sometimes I walk out into the woods and I have an 1.5 hour walk, and that's my main island of self-care practice for that day. Sometimes I have a 2-hour yoga practice where I roll out my mat. Sometimes I have 5 minutes of talking to my husband about what I'm grateful for, before we go to bed. And that becomes the thing in that day. It's very different every day. I just find I have a large toolbox of things and practices that really help and support me. Cold plunges is one of them, for example. But I don't have a practice where every morning I wake up and I take a cold plunge. It's like, oh, I feel it now, and then I go. So it's very different. If I worked at an office job and I was sitting 9 to 5 or, 8 to 6 every day doing something, I would have a different kind of dedicated big island of self-care in the morning and in the evening. But now mine are more sort of sprinkled throughout the day, which is a big blessing for me.
And what would you recommend, like if you could just choose one self-care practice or mindfulness practice for the ones listening who don't have a cold lake in front of the door, or, who live in the city, like not having a forest next to them, like what would you recommend, like the one thing you would recommend for everyone to do to connect to themselves, to nourish themselves?
Probably to cry. Probably to cry a lot.
How can you do that? Like pushing a button. Like I often hear people saying, like, I would love to cry, but I can't.
Yeah, well, that's a big thing. I mean, to have a regular practice of emotional release, it helps you there. So yeah, if you don't have a practice like that, then it's weird. Then we tend to not ever cry, until it builds and builds and builds and builds, and then the tears come, and then oftentimes we're triggered by something that wasn't even about the reason we needed to cry, in the first place. And so I have a dedicated practice of emotional release I've had for many, many, many years, where I usually make a playlist, and I have playlists. Yeah, anyone listening, you can go to Spotify and search Yoga Girl. You can find playlists there for different emotions. Like they're just the ones I use for myself, but I have them public. And I will do, it becomes a very active kind of dynamic kind of meditation of just moving my body to the point of emotion, basically. So it could be look a little bit like ecstatic dance, or like a letting go practice where you just let your body go. And sometimes I'll have an emotion in mind. Like, I know I'm frustrated. I know I'm pissed off about this thing this person did. Sometimes the injustice of the world makes me very resentful and angry, and I have no outlet. And then I find myself getting irritated and annoyed, and I'm, nagging my husband about stuff that doesn't matter because I'm angry with, dictatorship, for instance. Like, that's a real thing that happens to me in my life. I'm upset about something here, and then I don't have the outlet, so I get annoyed with little things that aren't the reason. I think we all do that. So I can choose an emotion and then go into that with music and then act it out, almost as if you were channeling your innermost, angriest tantrum throwing toddler, and you act the way you would have acted when you were, or the way you acted when you were 2, when things didn't go your way. And what happens when we start to act the emotion out almost every time is that if there is emotion there that needs to come out, it comes. And all of a sudden, like, I'm faking the anger, and then the anger is there, It's almost like opening a little channel to the release that we're looking for. And it can be sadness, it could be shame, it could be it could be joy. A lot of us have a hard time expressing and owning and honoring our own joy. I think it's a healthy thing to have an emotional outlet, and it makes everything feel lighter, and it makes it easier to get to the yoga and the meditation and the things that we do to maintain our well-being too.
Yeah, thank you. I think you're really good with speaking about your emotions, being connected to the heart. I mean, your podcast is called Speaking from the Heart, or it's now called the Yoga Girl Podcast, Speaking from the Heart, but still speaking from the heart. So, what I really find super inspiring about you, and this is why also I keep coming back to your podcast again and again, listening to episodes, because what I feel one of your abilities is that you can really touch people's heart by speaking from your heart. Many times I felt myself tearing up during your podcast episodes, and that's so beautiful and healing. And I would love to know, because it seems to be, when I listen to you, super effortlessly doing that to you and supernatural. And maybe it is, I don't know. And I would love to know, is it, is it so effortlessly, or do you also, because I find myself often meeting my inner critics when I record solo podcasts or hear myself speaking. And I think many people can relate to that. And as soon as I speak something, my inner critic hits in, even though I do the podcast now for over 3 years, still meeting that person. So how do you, overcome maybe that voices that say like, oh no, don't share that. Oh no, that's too intimate. Or like, do you have this still, or do you just like go?
It's a good question. And I've had this question asked since we moved to Sweden a lot, because in Sweden, solo podcasting isn't a thing here. Everyone is like a duo or a trio, and then you're talking to each other and bouncing off each other, and it's conversation. And, of course, that's a lot easier than sitting down for 60 minutes talking by yourself.
Yes.
A different thing entirely. And people here are so shocked by that. Like, how do you plan? How do you lay out the layout of the podcast? And I am shocked by the question, because I don't know how to do it any other way. If I had to sit with, for me, the interviewing part is very challenging. That brings up my inner critic. Mm-hmm. I want the person on the other end to think I'm doing a good job. I want to ask interesting questions. Like, I build up this idea of, now we're having a conversation, which is very different than for me, just natural energy of sitting down and just speaking by myself. And that's why I gravitate toward doing that, because it's easy for me. And one of the things that I, it's not for everyone. It really is a different kind of podcast where I'm just doing a really authentic sharing. And some people might think that that's super boring. It's not for them. It's not structured in that way. Maybe it's, it's really like you're following my heart as I navigate stuff. It's a little messy, probably. And if I ever went into the podcast app and I clicked on 1-star reviews, because of course they are there. There's people who,
oh really God, if that can ruin my day.
I would never be able to record. I would never be able, if I focused on that tiny, tiny percentage, there's very few, but they are there. I would sit here and I would be, oh, but this is terrible, But instead, I have to choose to focus on the fact that there's millions of people have downloaded this podcast. We have a really dedicated community who are here every week. And they wouldn't be here if there wasn't something good here. And I have to focus on that goodness. Otherwise, I can't do anything. So it's finding the way, figuring out what makes the inner critic loud, I think is really important. For me, it's reading reviews, also for my books and things like that, reading any review, positive reviews also. Like, it's better to just, we're not doing this for reviews, fuck the reviews. They don't mean anything, to not get stuck in, am I doing a good job or am I doing a bad job? And just focus on, I'm doing my job, which is to be here speaking as I am. Like, that's your job, to be as authentic as you can be to you. And if you're doing that, you're successful. And it doesn't matter what, the 1-stars, what they think.
So really practically, for me to imagine, so you don't prep any, red line, any storyline. You don't make notes up front. You just sit down and just talk for 1 hour. Just like, really? Wow.
I have she's my old assistant. She now does all of our podcasts. She writes descriptions and the titles. So we never know the title until afterwards. Like, she listens to it and she's like, what's the red thread here? That's the title of the show. No, I've never planned an episode in my life. And if I tried, I think I would get very nervous, because then I would have the expectation of something that's supposed to be something, And I don't know, I think it's a very unique podcast. It's very different from how other people do it. But if I did it differently, I wouldn't enjoy it.
Yeah. Do you cut things sometimes out when you just, I don't know, say something you didn't like, or?
No, if I like cough or I have to blow my nose or sometimes my daughter runs in or a dog comes in, then we edit that. But there's no.
Wow. I'm really impressed. Like I was like, I think she's pausing sometimes. Yeah, I'm sure. She must be like.
So I think it's like a Libra thing, maybe. I don't know. I like storytelling for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, you do it very well. And what would you recommend, like for people, like in general, because I think speaking is for many people super frightening and confronting. One reason is being a critic, but also what will people say? How will people judge? Like, how would you lead people speaking from the heart more?
Yeah, I try to remind myself that when people say negative things or you get negative feedback, which on social media is every single day of your life, if you're on social media, the feedback that affects me only affects me because I already believe this to be true about myself, which is why a lot of it I can just, I can read it and like smile and I'd never think about that ever again. And then there are certain things which might not seem so bad, but to me, it's like, oh, it really sticks. I think about it. I maybe engage in conversation with that person. I want to change their mind. It's never about them. It's never about their opinion of me. It's about my opinion of me. So of course we shouldn't unnecessarily expose ourselves to that kind of, sometimes it's hatred. I mean, sometimes it's just completely bullshit, but sometimes it can be like a little key of, oh, I have work to do here around my self-worth or around my abilities or around my, how anchored I am in my motherhood, or it's kind of like shines a little flashlight for me of, oh, I have healing work to do here. Because if I didn't, this wouldn't bother me at all. Mm-hmm. And then it's up to me to choose how often do I want to expose myself to that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. I set the boundary of, am I reading comments? Am I in my DMs? Am I reading reviews? Mm-hmm. And for a lot of people, I think engaging with that just makes that inner critical voice that's already our voice. It's already what we are telling ourselves. It just makes it louder. And what we probably need is to make the inner friendly voice louder instead. So focusing more on the really good things people are saying, because that always outshines and outweighs something else. So asking a loved one, asking someone we trust, like even it's a vulnerable thing to ask, but like, what do you think I'm really great at when it comes to, this thing that I want to do? Like, I want to start a podcast. What do you think is good about, like, when I speak or when I tell a story or who I am? And then sitting with that positive response and really, writing that down and talking about that and focusing more on how we are great and how we are so capable and totally enough and totally beautiful, just to start kind of outweighing that inner critic. Because for most people, I think it's deafeningly loud. It's very hard to quiet. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And do you because if I sit down and record a podcast, I'm sometimes afraid of my, inner rebel or inner, that just blasting out whatever. And I go like, shit, like, what did I just say? Do you sometimes have those moments, or do you have clear, like, I don't know, boundaries that keeps your inner, like, boundaries where you go like, oh no, that's a little bit too intimate. I don't want to share that. I mean, you're very used to sharing, of course, being on social media for many years. But do you have this inside of you that you go like, oh no, this is something I don't want to share. And you don't go there? Or is it really that you sometimes also surprise and go like, oh, I just shared that? Like, do you ever have this still?
I mean, I think both has happened for sure. But I think if you're speaking really from an authentic place, which is the the positive part about not planning and not having the structure and just speaking from the heart, if you really are speaking from an authentic place, if you veer off into a topic or speaking in a way that is out of integrity, you immediately know. It's just a feeling. Like I can immediately, maybe I'm talking about something and then I start sharing someone else's story, a friend who went through something. And then I can immediately like, oh, that didn't feel 100% right. Like that is actually not my story to share. And then I can veer the conversation or the sharing back to me and back to what's really filled with integrity. So I think if you are connected to your inner integrity, you don't have to worry about oversharing or sharing something out of integrity or sharing something that wasn't yours to share, because you're going to feel that right away in the moment rather than regretting it afterwards, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally.
But the inner rebel, I think we should all have our inner rebel out all the time.
Oh God, I'm still like, I think I should tame her a little bit, I go like
a little bit. No, I think she should be out there at all times. Like I really do. I think we need more true, like open-hearted inner rebels speaking.
Yeah.
We have a lot of good girls, doing the good girl thing.
I 100% agree. 100% agree. I'm sometimes a bit, I'm super honest right now, sometimes a bit concerned, because I'm also leading teacher trainings. I'm a teacher since 10 years, in Germany. Many people know me. And I go like, I'm a yoga teacher. I cannot do that. So I should be a model, like a role model. Sometimes
like
I have this.
What is an example of something you can't do? Like what?
I don't know. Like, I am also not keen on doing it, but back then, when I started social media, I think like I was younger than now, and I'm not keen to like post, I don't know, bikini pictures of me every day. But like right now, I go like, I want people to focus on the content, not so much on me being in a bikini, for example, but I also would not do, and sometimes I miss that freedom, and to just go like, I like to post this right now. Let's do it, not thinking so much like a cup of coffee, I post this right now, and I feel myself sometimes, thinking and overthinking, should I share this? Oh no, that's oversharing. That's too private, and I'm just keen also how you navigate that, because you're very open about your personal life. And everyone has their own boundaries, of course, and where they feel comfortable to share what, but, I think I'm moving in a direction where, I free myself more about this, labels of what I think a yoga teacher should show or not show, or, all of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Probably, I don't know if this is true, but I imagine that all of your students who look at you as their favorite teacher probably do because of who you are and less about the thing you teach. I really think people are drawn to people and less ideology and philosophy. It's about the person delivering the message. So if it's authentic to you, it's going to feel authentic to the people who care, who know you. And it might feel inauthentic to someone scrolling by, like, oh, a girl in a bikini, that's, and they don't matter. Like that person is not a student. They're not a client. They're not going to listen to your podcast. They're not a valuable person in your community that you should be listening to anyway. So you can just let them say their thing and move on. That's how I try to think of it, that a lot of those people who just yell at strangers on the internet, they're not they're not here for you anyway.
That's true. Yeah, that's so true. Speaking about the inner rebel, you have a beautiful daughter at home. I think she's 5 years old, right? Mm-hmm. So 5 years of being a mom, navigating a motherhood. And so first of all, congratulations again for being a mom. And, I think it's a very beautiful, precious journey we got to experience. And I would love to hear what are some things that motherhood taught you so far.
Oh God.
Just a few, just like quickly.
Motherhood.
Very quick.
there's nothing in this whole entire world that taught me more than motherhood. Not saying that you have to be a mother to learn and grow and evolve in life. Absolutely not. But for me, that journey has been very, very intense. I mean, even starting from just how she was conceived, I knew my whole life since I was her age. I would tell people, it was very strange. Like since I was 4 or 5 years old, I just knew I am not going to have any children until I am like ready, like fixed. I had this idea that like I would be, even as a child, like I knew I needed to heal things. And I think I just had many role models when I was little of people who had kids who weren't actually ready to begin that journey yet. So we conceived her through this massive journey of healing that I went through that really came with the single one epiphany that my daughter is on her way, you know. And even beginning motherhood from that point of view, everything for me has really been about healing my own inner stuff. I don't want to pass on all the old trauma and all the old conditioning and patterns and ideas that were passed down to me and passed down to my parents and passed down to their parents. I mean, it's been such a long journey for a lot of our ancestors, I think, to get to a place of having people there who are ready to transmute and heal and shift. And I really wanted to be that person in my lineage. I really wanted to be the person who breaks the patterns of stuff. And somehow I think I thought that would be very like beautiful and easy and heal. It's been like gut wrenching and super hard and shook up all of my old relationship and brought forward a lot of loss. And, you know, it's been really hard to journey toward a true place of healing my inner child as I mother her, you know, and it came at a huge life change and life shift. But I wouldn't have done it any other way, you know. So I really think that we can sort of parent ourselves as we parent our kids if we take that commitment really seriously. And mostly it's going to suck. I don't know if this is advice for anyone, but I think we tend to kind of glamorize the healing journey, you know, especially with parenting and this divine thing of motherhood. It's also really messy and really triggering and really hard. And just staying really committed to the light has been the most important thing for me.
What is the most challenging and what is the most beautiful, you would say, at that age that Lea Luna is in right now?
Oh, wow. She's actually, we're those parents who like brag about our child all the time that really annoy all of our friends with kids. But she's so happy. And all the time, like she wakes up every day of her life with a smile and kisses me on the cheek and says, "Good morning, mama." Like she has such a happy essence of her. Sometimes she even, she can almost trigger me in her joy all the time because she's so inherently joyful about things. And it makes it very hard for me to stay in my adult, you know, like she brings me back to my inner child all the time. Like she's just a little ray of sunshine to be around. And it's so fun. Like she's reading now. She's getting to an age where I can remember what it's like to be at that age. So we have very different conversations. And it's just, every year has been a joy, to be honest. The hardest part about mothering her is me. Unfortunately.
Thank you for a little sharing about that. I think there would be a million more things you could say, but thank you. So you just recently had birthday. So happy birthday.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. I think on the 5th of October, right?
Yes.
So another round around the sun. What will be, if you look into the future of this year, what will be this new year be about for you?
Wow. I think it's going to be about some kind of steadiness. That's just the feeling that I the past year and the move, and we made so many big life changes. And even the place we're living now, we know is not like our permanent long term. We live in a super tiny cabin, and we outgrew it within like 5 months. We're so ready to find a bigger place. So I think, yeah, it's this past year was kind of like finding my way back to my roots. And this year, I think, is going to be about really setting them and really finding that steadiness in life again, which I really missed.
Beautiful. So slowly coming to an end of this conversation, I think we rarely and way too less celebrate ourselves for how amazing we are as women, as mothers, as daughters, as sisters, as in general. Being a human being on this earth is freaking hard. It's challenging. And I would love to ask you, like, to think about 3 things you would like to celebrate yourself with me right now for.
Oh, what a fun thing. 3 things to celebrate me for. That's not my birthday then, like real things.
Yeah, just in general, like, what do you think is like what you're doing really amazing right now, what you're handling right now in life?
Yeah. Okay. I would love to celebrate myself for the fact that I am learning how to rest. I'm trying to take naps. I don't generally nap, but I lie there. Like I'm sleeping better, like I'm getting there. So that's a celebration for me. What else am I celebrating? I want to celebrate my connection to nature right now. The fact that I really feel excited every day to wake up and go outside, no matter the weather. I feel that relationship is a celebration for me, because it took me a while to come back to really feeling that connection. Like I am nature. I really, it's probably the biggest thing I'm celebrating in my life this whole year is
yay.
And then what else? Hell yes, want to celebrate my mothering. Yeah, I do that. I don't do that enough. My inner critic around motherhood is always there, but I am a really good mom, and I should celebrate that more often.
Yes, I celebrate you too as a mom. You're amazing.
Oh, thank you. That was so sweet.
I also would love to add, I also would love to celebrate you for some things. So I would love to celebrate you for your courage, speaking from the heart, because I think it takes a whole lot of courage and vulnerability. I know for you, it's probably normal, but just, standing there naked, vulnerable, I think it's beautiful. And you're doing so much for the world by doing that. So thank you for that. I want to celebrate that.
Thank you. A lot. It really does. It really does. Thank you.
Yes. So thank you for being you and doing everything you share, and letting us join your journey through this life, through all the different ways. So where can people meet you, practice with you? I had also a couple of questions coming in, like, when is Rachel finally doing a life retreat again? So people really, I think, craving that live meeting. I don't know when you plan it, but I know you're planning some live sessions coming up soon. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, sure. I have my platform's called yogagirl.com. So I have all my classes and practices and meditations, everything that's there. I teach a live class every 2 weeks, and it's very nature ritual based right now. I'm excited about the ones we have for the rest of the year. I do a big intention setting practice before New Year's every single year. That's my favorite thing to teach, I think, probably of the year. And for in-person things, I really want to book like a very Scandinavian, Swedish retreat, like a forest. I don't know. I'm thinking maybe snow. It's the wheels are turning in my brain, but I don't have anything planned and scheduled yet, but I am going to, and I will let the whole world know when we get there.
That sounds exciting. And I'm definitely joining the healing hour. in December. I'm really looking forward. Yeah. So thank you so much, Rachel, for your time and your energy, saying yes to this interview. Really appreciate that. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone listening. Anything you want to share, finally share?
There's not. It was so lovely talking to you today. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you for tuning in and listening. If you like this episode, I would be super happy if you share this podcast with your friends and leave me a positive review on Apple iTunes. Because only with your support, this podcast can grow and inspire as many people as possible. Thank you for joining, and we hear us next week.